We are in a state, shall we say. And the state, I find myself, there's two ways I experience my life. One is remembering who I am, and the other is forgetting who I am. And I find, I won't give you my percentages, just take my word for it. But, isn't that the truth? We're always in this state of deepening and connecting with the divine and having insight and having realization and having this aha moment. And then I'm amazed how quickly that can fade. And all of a sudden I'm stuck in some problem. I'm seeing the situation. So the work always is to remember who we are. And when I speak of that, I speak about not all of the ways we describe ourselves, not all of the ways that we say, I am this, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a mom, or a kid, or whatever, but the truth of who we are. You see, our philosophy puts forward an idea that is simple and yet profound. And it is simple in that it says there's only one God, one power, one life, one being, one essence, whatever you want to call that thing. There's only one. And if there's only one, then everything must be a part of it. Because if there's something that's not part of it, now we have two. Hadn't noticed, right? And now we just throw in our first premise. So everything is a part of the one, which would then also imply, if you're going to follow this logic out, you are part of the one. I am part of the one. And so when I'm remembering who I am, I'm remembering that God is not some far-off power or person or something outside of myself that's trying to intervene in my life, but rather this divine wisdom, this intelligence, this creative source is actually extending itself through me, is making itself known through me. I am the hands, I am the feet, I am the ears, I am the extension of the divine. We might even go so far to say that the divine is able to have an experience of itself through us. Isn't that cool? So, God and I have been having a great time lately. God's been having a great time through me of late. As I remember who she is and she remembers who I am and all's well. So in this process, so like as I said, I'm always finding myself either remembering who I am or forgetting who I am. And when I forget who I am, then I misplace power. I think that things have control over my life, that situations outside of myself are directing my life, that I'm powerless over. One way to refer to that is of being a victim. It's a victim mentality that says, I am at the effect. When I'm remembering who I am, then I move into a state of cooperation and co-creation with the divine. You see, it is an amazing and powerful thing to know that we are one with this divine intelligence that is the source of everything that has been. We become co-creative beings with it through the power of our thought, through the power of our intention, through the power of our belief. So we have to be careful about where we're placing our attention, how we're setting our intention. And what I've discovered, I was reminded this morning, I've been watching at my little complex. I live in this lovely complex. We have little ponds, and so now it's duck season. And those little critters are so darn cute. All of a sudden, there's mommies and daddies and little babies. One little flock, is that what you call them? Flocks of ducks? Groups, whatever, I don't know, whatever the proper terminology for groups of ducks. And, first day there's 10. What is it? A gaggle. Like geese? Okay, well, somebody Google this quickly. We must know. Whatever they call that group of ducks, Well, one morning I walked around and all of a sudden there's Mommy and 10 babies. They're all about this big. Next day there was Mommy and 8 babies. So, that's why they have so many, I think. But now it turns out there's Mommy and 5. And the 5 are now about almost as big as Mommy. So just this amazing thing how life bursts into being and fulfills itself and expresses itself. And I was thinking as I was watching them of one of my favorite metaphors for our essential problem. And the essential problem was given to us, and it was disguised as a fairy tale, as so many good stories are. You all know it. It's the story of the ugly duckling. And if you remember the story of the ugly duckling, there is a little duckling that just didn't fit amidst the other ducklings. And ducklings are not completely unlike humans in that they were mean to the ugly duckling. They called the ugly duckling names. They said, "What the heck is wrong with you? You don't fly well. You don't swim well. You don't quack worth anything. You got this weird and strange neck. What the heck?" And so the ugly duckling found her spirit being diminished. She found herself believing that that was the truth and the reality of who she was. She began to act according to her belief, and she longed for something. There was a divine wisdom and an intelligence within her. And so one time she saw these swans and thought, "Oh, to be beautiful like that, to be graceful, to be elegant, to be full of life. But lo and behold, I am but an ugly, misplaced duckling." And then one day, as the story unfolds, she has a reflection of herself in the still lake. And I love that idea. In the Bible it says, "But through a mirror darkly." But when I came face to face, I recognized the truth. And in that moment of self-reflection and a remembrance happened, and she realized that indeed she was not a duck, but a beautiful swan. And her life unfolded, and I'm assuming she lived happily ever after. I'm just going to fill in the rest here, right? No one ever really tells the rest of that story. But you see, isn't that a powerful metaphor for all of us? That through our divine, grace-filled beauty, we were designed uniquely to fulfill a purpose, to be a once in a lifetime. And I'm not talking your lifetime, I'm talking God's lifetime, which is a long time. A once in a lifetime experience. And I go, "Oh, but if I only had a short neck, or if I were only taller or thinner or older or younger or whatever our current story is, whatever our ugly duckling story is." And when we start to see that we're somehow separate from our good, when we start to think that there is something wrong with us, the truth is this beautiful swan was indeed a very ugly duckling. Good for her, she wasn't meant to be a duckling, right? And so sometimes we find ourselves in a state of comparison. We compare ourselves with our siblings. We compare ourselves with our spouses. We compare ourselves with our neighbors. We compare all of these things. And what we tend to do, what we do all the time, see, I get to hear a lot of people's inner stories. We're all coming to church looking good, acting like we got it all together. It's all working, baby. But I talk to you other times, and I know the real story. And so what we tend to do is compare our inner with other people's outer. We compare what's going on in our minds, which is scary, with what appears to be the experience for other people in the world. And we make all kinds of judgments. I remember so well, I used to have, years ago, in a center that I was the minister at in Texas. And there was this beautiful couple, and they were the it couple. He was tall and handsome. She was perky and fun, and they had money, and they had beautiful children, and they had a gorgeous home, and they, by all appearances, everything was perfect. And yet, I got to talk to him. And so, I didn't make any announcements on Sunday, but what I realized, it's a good thing I don't do that, right? It's a good thing that I don't. I don't want you to freak out like you can't talk to me now, but in that realization, because what I'd hear in conversation in the community was always this reference to this perfect couple. And I'd just smile inwardly to say, we don't ever understand another person's experience. But we say, there's something wrong with me, because I'm not living up to some ideal that was placed upon me, rather than moving inward to listen and to remember who we truly are, to remember what our divine essence is. There is a quote from George Saunders where he says, "The luminous part of you that exists beyond personality, your soul, if you will, is as bright and shining as any that has ever been. Clear away everything that keeps you separate from this secret luminous place. Believe it exists. Come to know it better. Nurture it and share its fruits timelessly." So he's saying to us, clear away all of that stuff. Clear away all those stories that we made up about ourselves, all of the stories that we have proclaimed as our truth and our reality. You see, the most powerful words in our entire language are, I am. Because what you fill in behind the I am defines who you are. And because we live in a universe that is responsive to our thought, simply by making that statement, forming that idea, the universe begins to fulfill itself through your I am. That's kind of scary, isn't it? Because listen to what we say we are. Right? I've had people say, I may even seen one of them say it right into my mirror, that I am broke. The universe says, okay, it's all good. I just do what I do, like Ryan's saying. When we make the intention, the universe responds to it. When we begin to realize and appreciate, my concept of the divine, of God, was, as a child, was something that lived outside of myself, that I hope only ever paid attention to my prayers, that I was trying to call this power to intervene. Then I discovered science of mind and realized that no, I say unto you, that rather the divine is expressing itself all of the time. And I am co-creative with that divine intelligence through the power of my thought, through the power of my belief, through the power of my intention, and through the power of where I place my attention. All of the time. Every second of every darn day, the universe is listening. Somehow that just doesn't seem right, But that is how it is. And because that is how it is, we have to get very clear that we are removing everything, all the distractions. This is why we speak of spiritual practice, because it is in that stillness. It is stepping outside of the monkey mind and into the place of stillness that we realize that we are not the chatter going on in our mind, that we are not the person that we think we are. We have a serious case of mistaken identity. We identify ourselves with the outer instead of the inner. And so our work is always to bring that back. And even in that bringing it back, we move into that state of consciousness that it's often called the witness state. And when we're in the witness state, we realize I am not my situation. I am not my thought. I am not my emotion. I am not my actions. I'm not my prior behavior. I'm not anything except a divine expression. However, I may be experiencing something. You see, we're not denying that stuff happens. That we're not saying, oh, stuff doesn't happen. But we are stepping into a consciousness that says we may be a person who is having an experience of low cash flow, but it doesn't mean that's who you are unless you claim it, unless you choose it, unless you identify with that. Now, Holmes said to us, Dr. Holmes, Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind textbook, good book, you ought to get it sometime. And he spoke in terms of this idea of there's an absolute understanding and there's a relative understanding. That there's the divine, the truth, the wholeness is the absolute dimension of mind. It is that place that exists within each one of us. He goes on to say, and I don't know what happened to my book. I've had this book 25 years now. And somehow all the letters got much smaller. It's weird how that happens. He says to us, in each human being, the whole is represented. And the entire knowledge of wisdom, of health, and the perfection of every act manifests itself, is represented. And it is through this inner divine voice, the divine nature within us, that we are able to perceive and trust and come into conscious contact with this divine principle. In the sight of this within, we are perfect. We must try to see ourselves as God sees us, free and filled with vitality and sufficiency for every occasion. That is moving into the absolute dimension of who we are. So one of our wonderful, beautiful, fabulous practitioners was having an experience of herself. And she had an experience of herself of having her spine be out of alignment, had an experience of herself being in pain, had an experience of herself being a human. And just recently, I love this story. She was laying in bed, contemplating the divine, aware of the circumstance, and had a realization aha moment and said to herself, wait a minute, God doesn't have a crooked spine. God doesn't experience this pain. God is not that. God is wholeness. God is truth. God is beauty. And lo and behold, wait for it, the clouds parted and God, no. Within 20 minutes, something started shifting in her body. Her body started aligning itself with the truth and the insight and the wisdom. And within a half hour, she had a different experience of reality. You see, when we can separate ourselves, pull ourselves back from the condition, from the relative, and move into the state of absolute, then we can declare and proclaim a new reality. And to the degree that we believe that experience, to the degree that we immerse ourselves in the truth, then that becomes the new experience. Because God is extending itself through that thought pattern, through that belief, into a new condition. For so long, we have spent our lives trying to change the conditions of our experience, thinking that when we get all the conditions lined up correctly, we're going to have a different experience of ourselves. And it turns out we got it wrong. Oops. It turns out that when we have the new experience of our absolute divine self, then a new experience of the relative can come into experience. So our work over and over and over is working from that place of, I think the fundamental question for us is really, are we going to live a vision-centered life or a condition-centered life? When we live a condition-centered life, people come to us and say, hey, let's take this trip to, you fill in the blank, it's your trip. And when we're living the conditioned life, we say, oh, I can't afford that. Silly people. No, I'm not talking you, I'm talking people you know, of course. But we're participating with the universe. When we're living a vision-centered life, we hear that opportunity and we say, wow, I wonder how I can allow the divine to manifest all that is necessary for the fulfillment of this vision through me. And in that question opens the possibility for greater good. Wow. Makes you want to start talking differently, doesn't it? Right? So I find this all the time. I find this, I think back to a couple years ago, we said we need a place to live as a community. And we found a place. And the appearance of the thing would say, we can't afford that. But we so engaged in the vision that lo and behold, if the resources and all that was necessary for that to come together didn't come together, and now we are sitting in what was only a vision 2 years ago. How do you like it? But as I said, we're always in a process of remembering or forgetting. And so then I find myself from time to time, I have to have a little word with myself because I start to think that the conditions determine the thing, that the cash flow determines the thing determines the thing. And then I have to have a little slap upside my head, spiritually, of course, and remember and re-engage and practice. Practice, practice, practice. When Moses went on top of the mountain, having an encounter with the divine, back in the day, it was believed that if you came face to face with God, you would die. Which makes you a little hesitant. But of course, we've all seen the movie, and we know he doesn't. Changes his hair, he comes back, blonde, but I call it blonde. I'm going blonde. But he has this encounter with the divine, and he says, well, who shall I say sent me? As he's going back to reveal the truth to the Israelites. And the divine says to him, tell him it is the I am that I am. More properly translated, it's kind of a play on words, but it's really, I am that which causes all things to be. I am the intelligence which is the creative force. You see, the most powerful words we use are I am. How similar that is to what the Eastern philosophy says the sound of the universe is Om. There's another one, Om. So when we are I aming, we are invoking the very power of the universe to fulfill itself through us. So my encouragement, my invitation, is for us to get very mindful of what we are declaring as our reality. If we continue to pretend like we're an ugly duckling and declare that as our reality, it will continue to be our reality. Not that anybody has anything against it, it's just that we live in a universe of order. But when we declare a new reality, when we declare a new possibility, when we allow our life to be vision-centered and then start asking ourselves, so how do I fulfill that vision? Then the answer is made known, the possibilities come forth, and all, as if by magic, people like to say, or what they really like to say is, you're so lucky. And I want to say, you're so lucky. Because I didn't just slap you, right? If you knew the amount of work that I go into to make my life look like it's effortless, you would appreciate it. Anyways. So, as I said, let us be very mindful. Our thought for the day is I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I truly am. I am remembering that I am a divine extension of the one life, having an experience of itself as wholeness, as love, as joy, of beauty, as abundance, as all good. This is who I am. Yes, I have periodic experiences of something other, but the truth of who I am remains the same. That deathless, timeless, eternal self. And that is from the place that I choose to live at least some of the time. Working on all of the time. So I invite you to simply join me as we move into prayer, as we move into that state of consciousness together. Welcoming our practitioners forward, welcoming that consciousness of the one life, this one supreme intelligence, the very source, the very substance of all that is. And knowing that that source, that substance, is extending itself in and through and as all creation. That the one life that has caused the entire universe to be in expression is the same divine intelligence that is coursing through our veins, beating our heart, breathing through our lungs. And so as we remember that we are one with the one, we recognize all power is available to us. We open our hearts fully to the presence of absolute unconditional love. We open our minds to divine wisdom. And we know that we are grounded and centered in that place of knowing. The master teacher, as he spoke to his disciples, said, if you will know the truth, that truth shall set you free. As we know the absolute truth of who we are, we remember that we are wholeness. We know that that wholeness is revealing itself as health, as well-being, as vitality, coursing through our veins, through every cell and every system of who we are. As we remember the truth of who we are, we know that we are love's extension of itself. And so as we choose absolute unconditional love, as we choose to fully and freely forgive, we move into an expanded state of consciousness and awareness. No longer are we bound by appearance, but we experience healing, transformation all around us. How good it is to remember that we are abundant beings, that we are co-creative with the only intelligence that there is, and that that source and that substance of all is working through us right here and right now. And so joyously we give, gracefully we receive of this divine bounty. We're good stewards of the good that flows through our lives. I invite you in this moment, if there's a burden on your heart, if there's a challenge that seems insurmountable, to be willing to step back, to move to that state of absolute awareness that no longer sees it as the obstacle, but as the opportunity instead. That allows healing to occur, wholeness to be revealed. How good it is to be in this state of awareness. As we realign ourselves with the truth, as we identify with the truth of who we are, we know that all things are made anew. And so we give great thanks for the many blessings in our lives, those which are seen and those which are yet to be experienced. We extend a blessing. We bless this spiritual community, remembering that it is a divine light in the world, to be a service, to be a transformation, to be a place where healing occurs. We extend that blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet, to the planet itself. We daily hold the high vision for a planet at peace, a planet in harmony with itself, with a world without borders where every human is recognized as divine. And as always, we bless all priests, all rabbis, all ministers, all teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. We remember that where two or more are gathered in the nature of that, the I Am is present, and it is good. So giving thanks, profound gratitude for this good, we simply accept it as done, knowing that there's a law of mind operating upon the consciousness that we establish, bringing forth the highest good for all concerned. And so it is in joy and gratitude then that I simply give thanks, releasing this word, knowing that it is so, as together we say, and so it is.